Afternoon, Cherries fans, and welcome to this latest show here on Up the Cherries in all departments, following our 1-0 defeat against Southampton. Yes, less said about that, the bloody better. We travel to the London Stadium for a game that is live on Sky. Now, before I welcome on my special guest, here is a little bit about our sponsors, Dental on the Banks. To find out what they can do for you, visit dentalonthebanks.co.uk. So West Ham, a side in good form at the moment. They're also in the Europa Conference League, and after a little bit of a rocky start, they've really found their footing. It is a pleasure to welcome on to the show from West Ham Network, Anton. Afternoon, Anton. How are you, mate?
Yes, I'm good, mate. Yourself? Thank you for having me on, mate. Thanks for having me on.
Not a problem at all. And yep, very well, albeit after that defeat against Southampton. We'll probably mention that a little bit. But of course, travelling up to the London Stadium on Monday night at 8 o'clock in front of the cameras. West Ham started fairly slowly this season.
Yep.
However, you're in very good form now.
Yeah. We've picked up a little bit of form recently. As a West Ham fan all my life, I've never witnessed West Ham have two consecutive good seasons in a row, let alone qualify for Europe in two consecutive seasons. And that's what's happened over the last couple of seasons. So Moyes has brought not just stability, but progression to the club, which is something I've not saw in my lifetime as a fan. And then we've been desperately needing players to come in over the transfer window. We've been crying out for it now. We did once upon a time bring in Pellegrini to the club, and we gave him a war chest, and he spent a war chest. And we brought in what at the time would look like the top-notch talent of Europe. But when I think back to that occasion, we brought in players to just keep the fans happy, really. And it wasn't about connecting the pieces of the jigsaw. It was about bringing the biggest names with the biggest signing fees, really. Because at the time, like any club would go 50 million quid on a striker, woo, buzzing, like 35 million quid on a winger. Brilliant, that's amazing. But that's not what we needed. What we actually needed was someone like David Moyes to come in and do what he's done, which is find a player like Vladimir Sufal, who cost 5 million quid, and he kept players out of the team. One of the players, which is in your team just now.
Yes.
But I'm not meaning that in a derogatory way either. I'm not meaning it like that. But you know, finding the right pieces. It doesn't matter the value. If they come at 20 million or they come at 1 million, as long as they're the right person with the right character, with the right attributes to work at this team, do it. So we've started slow this year because for the first time in maybe 3 seasons, we've spent money in a transfer window. And we've, in my opinion, bought nearly every position, not all, but nearly every position that we needed to strengthen. And the team is going through, for the first time in 3 or 4 years, a transitioning period. And even though we started off slowly, there were signs
Mhm.
of clicking. There were signs of clicking. And even though we're on a good upturn of form, we're still not fully there yet. And we all know that.
Mhm.
And it's just going to take something to switch it. I'm not trying to be cocky with that. I'm just genuinely looking at it trying my best to look at it from an outsider's point of view, looking in, thinking, Paqueta starts week in and week out for Brazil, started week in and week out for Lyon, and West Ham are just getting him used to the Premier League. And what he's done for us so far has been nothing but phenomenal. And he's not at 100%. So that's what's making it interesting for the rest of the season, you know?
Of course, we've got a number of firsts with West Ham. So West Ham were the first team that we actually beat in the Premier League. I don't know if you remember, Anton, that 4-3 win at the London Stadium. Um,
Oh, yes, I do.
yeah, a Callum Wilson hat trick. We
We
were,
know Callum Wilson rather well, and we're glad he's not there anymore.
but also when Moyes came back, it was his first game back at West Ham. And of course, we try not to remember that one very much.
No, absolutely not. No, listen, Moyes, Moy, the fan bases of every football club are all the same, aren't they? You've got some that are for and some are against, even if things
Mhm.
are going well and even if things are going bad. You know, it doesn't matter. But as a West Ham fan, the frustration the fans have got, West Ham fans with David Moyes in particular, is maybe some decision making in terms of who he starts sometimes.
Yeah.
And we do believe as fans he's got some fan favourites. His favourites that he wants to play in the starting 11. So
Mhm.
even if they don't hit a bit of form, if they've lost form, he doesn't rest them. And it's very clear that they've lost form and he still doesn't rest them. So that sometimes is a little bit of an issue with us as the fans. But the majority of the fans are all for David Moyes. Like I've not seen for such a long time, mate, the amount of fans that back the manager. Like, you know, you may look online and you may see some fans going, oh, he's static or he's old school or, you know,
Mhm.
he's not progressive and he's not pushing this and pushing that. But then, you know, you flip it on the flip side and think, well, do you want a relegation battle every single year? Because currently we're not doing that. Currently, what we're doing is we're challenging for Europe. And for 2 seasons on the trot, we nearly challenged for the top four. We were 2 games. In actual fact, we were 1 game away from the Champions League.
Yeah.
That's what David Moyes has done to West Ham. So we need to remember that.
Of course, it is Moyes' second spell at West Ham, and there was that spell in between where his contract wasn't renewed at the end of the season. What do you think the board's logic was behind that?
I mean, I'll be honest with you. When he left, I
Hmm.
was happy. And a lot of people I knew were happy when he left the first time round. When we brought Pellegrini in,
Hmm.
I was more happier than what I was when we brought Moyes in. When Pellegrini left and we brought Moyes back, I was so underwhelmed as a West Ham fan. Probably most West Ham fans were. He's proven every single fan wrong with an abundance. So nobody really wanted him back, but he's brought something that he said he would do. So, one of the first things he did was he took the team up to pre-season training in Scotland when he came back to St Andrews, and I was very fortunate enough to go across there. And this was during the kind of pandemic, and got a chance to meet up with them and just see what they were doing. Well, it was just when we were opening back up, I could
Yeah.
say. And he'd done a really deep interview with the West Ham website, and they released it. And everything he said, he's doing. He believes in you've got to give a manager a chance. You've got to build from top to bottom, bottom to top. You've got to look at the youth. You've got to look at this, and you've got to look at that, and backroom staff, and this and that. And he's doing everything. And sometimes it takes him a bit longer to get there, but he is doing everything. So you know what? I love how David Moyes proves West Ham fans and the football fan base wrong several times, because he doesn't just do it about himself. He does it with some of the players that he plays. When West Ham fans doubt him, he sometimes steps it up.
Of course, Moyes did a very, very good job in the early 2000s with Everton. And I think there he got time. And you alluded to it there that when he's given time, he does make the right decisions. He builds the team up. And whereas at Man United and Sunderland, he didn't really get that. But
No.
Do you feel that he is doing to West Ham what he did with Everton?
If I'm being really honest, I think when he made the move from Everton, he'd got Everton to a specific place,
Yeah.
and the infrastructure was reasonably all right.
Hmm.
David Moyes has got a history with working with a small squad.
Hmm.
We've had many Everton fans on talking about the time he was at the club, and he doesn't like working with a big squad, and he's very stubborn in terms of his recruitment. So, what we would look at would be a no-brainer. He might not go. Nah, he doesn't fit into the mold of the team. So for me, he I'm glad he's been given the time. I believe in the process. That's the thing. I would say David Moyes has changed my opinion, not just on West Ham, but on football.
Yeah.
Genuinely on football, because gone now suddenly is this young boy that looks at signings and does. I don't get excited by a £30 million signing anymore because it's not about the price tag to me. I get really excited about the youth signings, even though Boys recently hasn't utilised any of the youth. But I get really excited about a young player coming through that Moyes has looked at and scouted. I get really excited about a diamond in the rough that he's brought over from the Czech Republic. Because you think, what, they've done their due diligence and he does it. So the similarities are there, but football's changed so much since he was at Everton. So
Yeah.
much. And the difference is that it's dog eat dog. So for him to be, we've seen it this season with the amount of sackings that have been made. Yous have seen it with the amount of sackings that have been made,
Well, yeah.
so early
Hmm.
in a season, October, and I think we're on number, what, 4?
Yeah.
5, is it? I don't even know. Like,
Well,
it's,
we got the first one in
yeah,
with Scott Parker.
yeah,
You've had Bruno Lage, of course, Steven Gerrard yesterday.
yeah.
Um, trying to remember the others.
But the point,
Tuchel.
yeah, but the point is, it's like the merry-go-round in this league is mental. So, for there was never any doubt when West Ham were struggling at the start of the season. The owners didn't even need to speak out. They spoke out, but it wasn't a vote of confidence they were giving him. They were literally going, "Don't be ridiculous."
Yeah.
Like they were laughing at people who were even doubting him. Don't be ridiculous. And it is like that. Right now it would take a lot for Moyes to go out the door. A lot.
Mhm.
He's here for the long term. And as long as he keeps West Ham qualifying for Europe, hitting the top 10, trying to win a trophy, that's what we need. That's what we want.
Of course, we do have in charge of the club now. Scott Parker's left. We do have a former West Ham man, Gary O'Neill, in charge.
Quality.
What did you think of his time at West Ham? And secondly, what do you think of the job that he is doing at Bournemouth?
Do you know what? First and foremost, I'll go back to Scott Parker because obviously he's also ex-West Ham
Of course.
legend. Like I actually genuinely believe there is a proper future manager there. I do believe it. It's
Mhm.
just about finding the right club at the right time for him. I do believe it, and I can imagine maybe some Bournemouth fans are going to be like, "What are you talking about? You don't know
Yeah.
nothing. He's not managed for you." But I see the way I see what he did with Fulham, see what he did with you guys, up until the point where it kind of started to kind of falter.
Mhm.
And so I've got a lot of respect for him for his time at West Ham, and I actually wouldn't be surprised if one day Scott Parker becomes a West Ham manager in the future. Now, when it comes to Gary O'Neill, he was brought in during the championship for
Mhm.
West Ham and progressed into the Premier League with us. And he was a fantastic midfielder for us. He was really great. We all knew what he was capable of doing. He was capable of smashing a ball from 30 yards and scoring a wonder goal if he needed to.
Yep.
But, I think it was a bit of a surprise for us outsiders looking in that Gary O'Neill was given the opportunity. I think he's doing a grand job. And I think Bournemouth have got some really nice, tasty players. Really nice, tasty players. And you know how to. You've got kind of a cool, from an outsider's point of view, you've got kind of a cool philosophy. So, Ryan Fredericks, for example, I did not think West Ham would get rid of Ryan Fredericks. And he was struggling to get game time. However, he's Declan Rice's best mate, literally his
Yeah.
best mate. And I thought he had so much potential. He had a stop-start career really at West Ham. He came with a bit of an injury after Fulham,
Mhm.
and I think managers like Gary O'Neill and Scott Parker know how to get the best out of these players. And these players just need the arm around them sometimes. And that doesn't mean that they can't make it at any other club. It's just that they get the right manager at the right time. West Ham, I've seen so many players like that who haven't made it somewhere else and come to us and made it. So yeah, I think Gary O'Neill's obviously doing a very decent job. And what do you fans think?
Well, I've come under a little bit of criticism myself because personally, Gary O'Neill, I've met Gary in person. I think he is the right man for the job. He's very, very meticulous on how he studies the game. So one thing that I know is that he'll watch every single minute of every single game that a team has played that season to work out how we actually combat any changes that might be made. Personally, I think he deserves the job because he's taken over a team which, of course, Scott Parker made the comments after that Liverpool defeat. And those were comments that, for a young team, which we have got, Adam Smith is the oldest player in the squad. That's got to be a bit disheartening, especially when you've just been promoted to the Premier League. You've just been beaten 9-0, albeit by a Liverpool side that hasn't really taken off this season. But at the same time, on their day, I think they would have beaten anybody. I think they would have beaten anybody in Europe playing like they did. We made it easy for them.
Yeah.
But he's taken that squad from rock bottom in confidence and got that draw against Wolves. Then we went up to Nottingham Forest. We were 2-0 down. I thought, well, we're in trouble here.
Came back
1-3-2.
Yeah.
And it's just spiraled from there. Yes, we've been beaten by Southampton, but that is now another task that Gary's got to overcome and show, right, okay, we've been beaten. How do we come back from that?
How do you bounce back from that?
Yeah,
yep,
I think
absolutely.
he will. I think the two games we've got now, which is West Ham and then Spurs, are two very, very difficult games. But what we expect as Bournemouth fans is, at the start of the season, I'd be happy with 17th. And, if he achieves that, I think it's job done.
Yeah.
So I would give Gary O'Neill the job all day long. There's fans, though, that wouldn't. And there's fans that feel that maybe he's a little bit tactically naive. His substitutions against Southampton maybe should have been a little bit earlier. But personally, I would give him the chance because I think he's earned it.
Yep. Cool.
But, of course, West Ham, last time out, we mentioned Liverpool there. We got beat 9-0. You only narrowly got beat 1-0. And to be honest, you were unlucky, really.
The stress really does fall on the 1-0 and the narrowly. Like I was devastated. Like it not walking away with something from that game. At minimum, we deserved a point. It was such an important game for both clubs, and you just felt like it was Liverpool had to do anything in their power to get that victory over the line because they came off the back of two good victories, one against Man City, and if they had faltered against West Ham, it would have been, what's going on here? And I'm not saying that means that's why they got through. It was literally the difference of West Ham missing a penalty and not walking away with a point. I mean, I think for the first time in my lifetime, we've gone to Anfield and Liverpool have put on 3 defensive substitutions very early in the second half because they cannot cope with the onslaught that's coming towards them. So I've left devastated but proud, head held really high, and I think it's brought our team closer and hungrier. If I'm being really honest, it really felt like that listening to the guys after the game. Declan Rice spoke after the game. I mean, it's not very often you get an opposition team who get beat, getting the man of the match. And it wasn't just him. There was 4 or 5 other players in the team that could have got man of the match in that game. And we initially set up reasonably defensive. We played 3 covering central defensive midfielders in that team. And we dominated. Intensity was high. We caused them problems. They scored a kind of snatch and grab goal and it really put a death to the first half for West Ham after the 20th minute. So we had the first 20 minutes, they had 25 minutes, and then we had the whole second half. But we just couldn't convert our chances. And that was a really unfortunate thing. That's where we've struggled a lot this season. So, yeah, I would say the confidence is high in the West Ham camp. And the players are starting to click a little bit, which is pretty positive.
Declan Rice, as you mentioned there, has been outstanding again this season. And, how imperative, should he be get an injury, and touch wood that won't happen, but should he get an injury, how would Moyes replace a player that has been so good this season? And, well, England as well, really.
We did have a spell last year, a couple of games where he was missing, and we as fans were panicking and worried. But, I think every team has to learn, and I think David Moyes is planned for this, that every team has to learn to be able to either sell their best player or deal when their best player is out. And this is the difference between what Moyes has done this transfer window, which is bringing in cover that he believes in. So last year we had a player called Alex Kroll.
Yeah.
But he didn't play. Like when he should have played, he didn't play. Moyes just did not fancy him at all. So we never signed him on a permanent. He was only on loan. He got the least time I've ever seen another loan player come in. But we brought in this young lad called Flynn Downs from Swansea. Yes. Flynn Downs was I think he was the top progressive passer or successful passes in the top 5 leagues last season. And we've brought him in, and he wasn't getting any game time, but he started to play a little bit more now. And I try my best not to get carried away with a player. On paper, he would be classified as an underwhelming signing, but he's one for the future. But he stepped in, he started his first game in the Premier League against Liverpool, and again, dominated, intensified the game, dominated play, broke up the play, made sure the ball got to the right person. Bit Declan Rice-esque.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, there's only a couple of weeks of difference in age in them. Declan Rice has been playing at the highest level for such a long time. Flynn Downs is making the step up from the Championship. So even though there's only like a couple of weeks of age difference in them, one is a lot more advanced in terms of the games and the experience he's got compared to the other. So, listen, Declan Rice is the best player that we've had in a long time. And you want to build your team around him. Of course you do. He has said publicly, but every player would say it publicly, they want to win things.
Yeah.
But you have to make sure if he is going to move, he has to make sure it's going to be the right club, because there's no guarantees if you go to clubs like Chelsea, you're going to win anything, But I'm not saying he wants to leave, because I genuinely think he would stay, but he needs to see the commitment from the club. And the commitment from the club is 2 solid seasons in Europe, pushing for the top 6, which we have done. What are you going to do this year? I think what saves West Ham is the World Cup in the winter.
Yeah.
That saves us. That keeps him probably at our club for the rest of this year, minimum. And then depends on what we do again. We need to progress. And I don't know what would keep him at the club. I don't think winning an FA Cup and just sitting 12th would keep him. But I think maybe winning a cup competition and finishing the top 6 could. Because then that'll be the 3rd season that West Ham have ever done that in our modern history, or in our whole history, So I don't know, but he's crazy player. I sat with a group of friends watching. I was at Old Trafford watching West Ham Man United, and we ended up having hospitality, and all the people I was with, par one, was Man United fans, and they were like, "Oh, I don't get this hype about Declan Rice. I don't get this hype about Declan Rice." And I was looking at them thinking, you blatantly don't watch him then. You've never watched them. And it was true, they hadn't, but they were just judging him on what everyone else was saying and not really watching him a lot. And they were saying, oh, McTominay this, McTominay that. I think McTominay could do what he does. And I watched the game, and I was just like, we got beaten the last minute. It was literally last minute. And I was just like, I looked around and I was like, fucking joking me, like, McTominay? No, he dominated the whole game. He didn't know how to deal with him at all. Like, he sometimes goes under the radar because he does all the dirty work. But his individual stats, I know it's not all about stats, are phenomenal. And now this year he's progressing forward. And that's what's quite exciting, because he is actually good at doing it. He gets the ball when he drives forward, and he can get from our box into opposition's box very quickly around players. And last week got his first goal for the club in the Premier League this season. So he's off the mark, and that's a positive sign for West Ham fans as well.
what strikes me about Declan Rice is that he always wants to play. And I think he's got West Ham at his heart as well.
Yeah.
And, that is a big, big thing for me. Is if let's look at Jack Grealish. You could go to Manchester City. You might not necessarily play every week. And Declan Rice, I think, has got it good at the London Stadium. And he knows that he's got something special, a very special club. Let's be fair. West Ham are a special club.
Well, I think the kind of big difference between, say, Jack Grealish and Declan Rice really is down to the fact that where Aston Villa were and where West Ham were, and
Yeah.
West Ham's trajectory was looking dramatically up, and Aston Villa's trajectory was looking dramatically down. So this is what Moyes has done to the club. So this is why I'm not being naive enough to the whole situation, but this is why I'm trying to think outside the box. I'm thinking, at one point Declan Rice was linked to Manchester United, but for most of last season we were above Manchester United. For most of last season, we were above them.
Yeah.
And so you're thinking to yourself, why would you go there? Like, why would you do that? It doesn't make sense. They weren't even in Europe, and we were. We got to the semi-finals of Europa League. We're very unlucky not to get through, and fingers crossed we could have gone on to win it. But yeah, the thing is about Declan Rice is I don't genuinely doubt for a fact he starts in every team in the Premier League. Yeah. Like he's a molded midfielder. He'll mold to any team. He'll mold to what he does, and I think that's shown when he plays for England as well. He's probably one of the first names on the team sheet when it comes to that.
And you're doing quite well in this Europa Conference League as well, aren't you? How much of a priority is that? Because it is Europe's third competition.
Yeah,
I'm sure that you want to get into Europa League, and if there's an opening, into the Champions League. But how much of a priority is that for David Moyes?
I think it is. Moyes has said all along, and he's alluded to the fact that the Premier League's the bread and butter. That's what he has alluded to, but not necessarily said outright. But the Conference League is really important because it's European football, and now it is become a reputable competition. It's not like the old days of the Intertoto Cup, which we have won when there was 3 finals. So I think Roma showed all the world that the Europa Conference League means something. And fair play to them for doing that. It's been the inaugural winners of it, the competition. So I think for us that we've played 6 actually, 2 qualifying and 4 in the league, and won all 6. So, but in the league we've played 4, won 4, and we were playing as long. The team below us have got 6 points. We've got 12. So we've qualified for the last 32. But West Ham if you win the group, you qualify for the last 16. So we just need to, the other team needs to win both their games, and one of the games are against West Ham. So as long as we win that, we go into the round of 16. At that point, you've got to be thinking to yourself, let's go for this. Let's go for this. Why not? Why not go for the competition? So the thing is about our squad, when you look at the squad that plays in most of the games and the teams that are going out at the Europa Conference League, they borderline could go out in the Premier League. It's each 11 is as good as each other for the first time in a long time, minus injuries. When we don't have the injuries, which we have got a few of just now, the 11 versus the 11 would be a really tough 11. You're talking about Antonio versus Scamacca. I mean, Scamacca is a quality striker. Italy, number 9, fantastic ability, looks great. Antonio's just beast mode. Most defenders don't want to come up against him. Imagine putting the 2 of them on the same field. Like, I can imagine them being quite tough to play against, with the 2 of them there again. So, and it's the same throughout the rest of the team. So it's just about connection for us. I'm talking here like everything's rosy. It's not. It's just about making sure we connect. And that's the biggest key part for our season, getting these players to gel quickly, which they're starting to, and connecting. And if they connect, then I feel like Moyes said today in his press conference, he said, we need the goals to happen throughout the team, which is where that's happened over the last 2 seasons. All players contribute to goals, but this season it's not been like that. So hopefully that will come soon.
And Mikel Antonio as well, a fantastic player that's been consistent over a number of years now. What do West Ham fans think of him now? Because I'm guessing he is coming to the twilight of his career, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he spoke out last year and said he needed support. So we've all grown to love Antonio. Antonio's been such a good servant to West Ham. He's our all-time Premier League goal scorer. And I mean, that's ridiculous to say that considering some of the players we've had. You know, the Jermaine Defoes of the world, the Freddie Canutis of the world, and Pillow Di Canios of the world, and Mickey Antonio is our all-time goal scorer in the Premier League. But fair play, he's done a great job. He's played right back, left back, centre back, right midfield, left midfield, and a striker. And David Moyes has made him an out-and-out striker. And he sometimes can't finish his dinner for love nor money. And he does sometimes the easiest things really hard and does the hardest things really easy. He's so unpredictable when he goes forward. And if you ever saw his goal against Fulham, last week, that was a prime Antonio goal. He absolutely shrugged off the defender, no ifs, buts, or maybes, broke free, got 1-on-1 with the keeper, hit it straight at the keeper, the ball parried out back to him, slipped it wide and then put it in the back of the net. Such an Antonio goal, where your natural born goal scorer, your Salahs, probably your Scamacas, probably your natural born goal scorers, Callum Wilson's back, and when he was at Bournemouth, would have slotted it past the keeper first time. So Antonio got his second chance and got the goal, but Antonio's not starting the Premier League just now. He's coming off the bench, but he's banging in a few goals. And this is how West Ham are utilising the squad. We've got strength and depth, which we've not had for such a long time, mate. Not such a long time.
Yeah. And of course, Jarrod Bowen as well, that you've got up front as well. He's a bit of a different type of striker, isn't he?
Do you know what? We brought him in. David Moyes works wonders with players that come up from the Championship. So when we first signed him, he hardly played him. And we kept going, why are you not playing him? He brought him on the odd appearance here and why are you not playing him? And then he let him loose. I think we played Southampton and he scored and he was all over Southampton. And that was his bedding in period, and he had bedded in, and bang, he went on to he's having such a great time at West Ham, banging in goals and assists. And even when he doesn't have a great game, which is very rare, he's still capable of getting a goal or assisting a goal. The but to it was this season, he started off really slow. Really quite slow, and he was one of the players that fans were calling to be dropped or rested. And I think a lot of West Ham fans were quite confused when Gareth Southgate included him in the squads for England. But since then, even David Moyes spoke out and went, "Do you know what? You're probably 5 goals away from guaranteeing yourself on that plane." And he's already got 3 of them since that period. So he's starting to find him. He's another player. He's not. He's found his form. He's back in his jig. You know, he missed the penalty against Liverpool. That won't do his confidence any good. But he's in the rhythm now. He's in the rhythm, and I think we need that. And he does like playing at home. Yeah, he really does like playing at home. So yeah, I've got the confidence in him.
Before the last question, really, before we go on to, of course, Monday's game, is with regards to Mark Noble. Such, a loyal player. I know he had 2 loan moves, I believe, but he is a one club man, and they're very, very rare. And are you missing him?
Absolutely. Oh my God. Do you know what? Last year when he was, or even the season before when he was playing reasonably regular, fans were starting to go, "Oh, nah, you can't put." You knew how West Ham were going to set up when Mark Noble was starting. That's just because he was coming to near the end of his career. But what West Ham fans didn't realise was, and we gave him the best send off you can possibly give a legend, and he is a legend down the club. We gave him one of the best send offs he'll ever any player would ever experience. And suddenly he was gone. Mm-hmm. And then it was like, oh shit, what are we going to do now? Declan Rice is taking over the captaincy. He's only 23. How, he literally, when you listen to Declan Rice talk about Mark Noble, he looks like he's going to cry half the time. He literally looks like he's going to cry all the time. So about how happy he was when he was there and how sad he is when he's not there. But I don't know if you know as Bournemouth fans, but West Ham have actually brought Mark Noble back now. Mark Noble is back. Yeah, so Mark Noble's now back as a sporting director. We all thought that he was going to be gone a bit longer, but the club have decided to bring him back in. So he starts his role in January, but he is there. We know he's there because we see the clips of him in and around the club. And his role is literally to connect the players to the every element. He's the in-between guy. So he's been brought back in, and it was a no-brainer to bring him back in. And apparently the players were absolutely buzzing when they seen him walk through the door in his more of official role, which is a suit and tie role. So yeah, he's back, and since he's actually been announced back, we hit a bit of upturn for him as well. So it's nice to have him in and around the club again. He went away and done a degree over in Harvard, something like that. So I think he'll probably be working on his coach's badges, but he's there as a sporting director. I think he's got a job for life at West Ham. No worries about that.
Without a shadow of a doubt. So, the next real question before we go on to predictions is, how do you think West Ham are going to line up against Bournemouth, considering how we play with the three in the middle, two on either side, Solanke up top, and four at the back? How do you think you'll line up?
So we have a current couple of niggles, which isn't great. This is what's really kind of maybe pushed us back a little bit, because we've, for the past 3 games, have had to play a makeshift back four. So we've lost. You couldn't write it. We've been desperate to bring in centre halves. We brought in all the centre halves, and suddenly all the centre halves weren't available. Literally all of them. So we had to play right back and a left back in the centre back positions. But now we got Zuma back. And he looked really, really good against Liverpool. He looked back to his normal self. And we played Kira there, and there was a little weakness. Kira is a very, very good player. He's a German international, predominantly plays right back, but can play centre back. We signed him from PSG. But West Ham fans have fallen in love with the guy. But he's much better at right back. Much, much better at right back. So we're desperate to hear the name of Craig Dawson come back on that team sheet. Another underwhelming signing who has been absolutely brilliant at West Ham. And he's going to go down in folklore as one of those legends. So the reason why I'm bringing that up is if we can make sure we've got someone like Dawson back, then what that does is it puts our team back to where we need it to be. So it puts Kira out on the right back position, which then gives us the solid back line to allow us to be as creative as we want to be, depending on who's fit. Because Paqueta was missing for Liverpool. He picked up a bit of a knock against Southampton, something to do with his collarbone. Moyes alluded to the fact today that he could be back for Monday, but we don't know. Moyes plays smokes and mirrors all the time. Every press conference he has done for the last 2 years. When he first came, he was giving so much away, everyone could pinpoint what he was going to do. Now he's clocked onto that, and he doesn't give anything away. He actually sends you in a whole egg and spoon race. Like, you're all over the shop when it comes to that. The big thing for me, though, is if I genuinely put this down to this, and it's not an underthink. It doesn't matter, guys. It's what West Ham turns up. It's what West Ham turns up. It's how this game's going to be defined. And I tell you, when West Ham fans make our judgment is when the team news is announced. And if specific players are missing and specific players are starting and defenders aren't playing, then we'll go, shit, we're going to be backs against the guns, and Bournemouth are going to be at us. And any opposition team is going to be at us. So it comes down to how we set up. Predominantly, we set up with a 4. We go with a 4, and then the 2 protective players in the middle, Declan Rice and Tommy Soucek. Usually, Tommy Soucek's slow starting this season. There's a big call for Flynn Downs to come in. There's also a big call for Paqueta to drop back in deep, because Paqueta's natural role for Brazil and natural role for Lyon was playing as a deep lying midfielder who could watch the game from the back and dominates. He's an outrageous footballer. He can't get the ball off his feet. He shadows the ball. I'm praying that he's there for Monday, because it's really exciting to see West Ham under the lights, with a Paqueta under the lights. But I just don't know if he's going to be fit enough to make it. And then you'll probably have Scamacca up top, and you'll have Jared Bowen out the one side. Max Cornet, who we signed, who I love and think is going to be a fantastic player for us, has picked up a bit of a calf strain. Moyes alluded to the fact he may or may not be available, which probably means he won't be, which gives... This is the big part for West Ham, who he plays at left wing. If he plays Ben Rama, you've got shitloads of creativity. If he plays Fornals, he was once upon a time a creative player, but David Moyes has changed him into a pit bull terrier in the middle of the park. But what you do then is you lose your creativity on the left-hand side, and that sometimes works against us depending on who you're playing. So if he plays with Benny and Bowen with an attack of Scamacca, or he's got the balls and he puts Antonio out on the left and puts Scamacca up top and Bowen on the right, then at that point, and with a solid defence, I'm not... Listen, West Ham, anything can happen, but I am feeling in a confident, better mood about West Ham than what I was 4 weeks ago when West Ham fans were calling for Moyes' head.
we better do a little bit of a prediction of how this is going to go. So, of course, we're coming off the back of a defeat. You're coming off the back of a narrow defeat. Both 1-0 defeats, but I would say that your one was a bit closer. Although we
Yeah.
put Southampton under a lot of pressure, just
Yeah.
didn't seem to do anything, up front. But we've seen that before. We saw that
Yeah.
against Brentford, and then we bounced back against Leicester. Um, so I'm going to go. I'd be happy with a point at the London Stadium. I'm going to be honest. I can't see a victory for us, but I'd be happy with a point.
Okay. Now I'm going to predict because we're struggling a bit for goals, and I do think we will connect at some point.
Yeah.
I think we'll score. I think we'll score a few. But the funny thing is, I genuinely think Bournemouth will score a few. I see this as a high scoring game because we concede goals. We
Yeah.
concede goals. We've got a player due to come back from injury who's a new signing we signed in the summer, who in theory is the final piece of the jigsaw for the back line, but he got injured in the preseason. His name's Aguerd. When he does come back, he looks top biscuits. He looks top biscuits, and but we don't have him, so we have to deal with what we've got. So I do think you'll score. I absolutely do. So I'm going to go for a 3-2 West Ham win, but it's going to go run tight. It's not going to be dominating at all. It's going to be ran tight. It's going to be snatch and grab sometimes. It's going to go end to end during the game at some point. It's live under the lights in front of the telly. And yeah, it's probably going to be one of the wild ones you could call it. So I'm going to go. I think hopefully we've got enough grit and determination to get the win. The worrying thing is if we do get beat, it can, for West Ham, that could really spiral out of control.
Yeah.
And that's so yeah, I'll go 3-2-1 West Ham.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Anton, onto the show. There is one more thing that I need you to do, and that is to tell everybody about the West Ham Network and, of course, the fantastic guests you've also had on.
Yeah, absolutely. So West Ham Network, we actually used to be a different name channel, and we joined forces with another channel, which then created the West Ham Network. And we do your typical content, previews, reviews, match day content, a lot of match day content. We do opinion pieces, you name it, left, right, and center. But what's really cool and unique about our channel is we bring a lot of ex-professional players on and some of the not ex, but current celebrity West Ham fans on as well. So we've had Harry Redknapp, of course, who you also have had on the channel. We've had Ben Shepherd, Ray Winston, and we have current pros that play not for West Ham because they're very tough to get on, but currently play in the circuit of Serie A or League 1, etc., who have previously played for West Ham. And we bring in a lot of the ex-pros as well, the Tony Cotteys of the world, the John Hartsons of the world, you name it. They've been on our channel. So I think we're up to over 100 odd ex-professionals and celebrities on the channel just now, pretty much every week. So if you are interested in going checking it out, then click on the subscribe button and you can come out and check out our content. But you are Bournemouth fans, so why would you want to come out and check the West Ham content? I don't know, but each to their own.
No, it sounds interesting, mate. And all the links for Anton's channel will be in the description. But it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. And thank you so much for joining me on this show.
No worries, mate. Yeah,
All
thank
right,
you for
all
having
the
me as
very,
well.
very best. Thank you
Take
so
it easy.
much. And thank you, everybody, for joining me on this special show. Please do remember to hit the like, the subscribe, and the bell button below to be alerted to any new videos we do here on Up the Cherries in all departments. Please do check out our interview with Harry Redknapp. I'm sure that will be of interest to lots of you West Ham fans out there as well. We've also had Steve Cook, Sean Teal, we've had Steve Fletcher, and lots more. We've even got James Hayter on recently, as well as Lee Bradbury. So do check out the channel. Do check out Cherry Picking. If you do want to go over it again, do watch our reaction show to that Southampton game as well. You might want to watch that one. But hopefully we can get back to winning ways. But until the next video, up the cherries, and I'll see you then. Thank you for joining us.